Today, we're going to be testing the difference between 8MB and 12MB Voodoo 2 cards. It's said that in games, the 12MB cards run a lot smoother than the 8MB, so today we're going to find that out for sure. Let's get started. In the late 1990s, 3dfx, the company who made the Voodoo 1, had just come out with their new Voodoo 2 card. At first, there was only 12MB variants sold, but later, as a cost-reduced alternative, they started selling 8MB cards. What's the difference between a 12 and 8MB card, you may ask? Well, there's a few. First of all, the 8MB card has half the amount of texture memory as the 12MB card. The Voodoo 2 has 2 TMUs, so that means that the TMUs are only getting 2MB of memory each, as opposed to 4 on a 12MB card. The main downside to this was that oftentimes games had to substitute textures, and doing so took up valuable processing speed, slowing down the game. That's how come Voodoo 2 8MB cards stutter a lot more than 12MB cards in games. So, I think it's time we go ahead and see the difference side by side. I'll be using 2 different Voodoo 2s in this experiment, an 8MB Diamond card and a 12MB TechWorks card. Something to note about the 12MB though is that it only has 12 memory chips since it's a really late model Voodoo 2. But it's still a 12MB card and it shouldn't be any faster than a normal one. Both cards have their RAM chips clocked at 100MHz or so. I'll be using a PC with a Pentium 2 running at 400MHz, a 440BX GB motherboard, 256MB of SD RAM for our test system. I'll be installing the Voodoo 2 in the second PCI slot, and I'll start with the 8MB card. I'm also using a GeForce 2 MX400 as my 2D card, and an SD to IDE to eliminate a hard drive bottleneck. As for the Voodoo 2's settings, I'll be using an 800x600 resolution at 60Hz, and as you can see here, I'll be using the Fast Voodoo 2 4.6 driver. And this is going to be a side-by-side comparison, so here's me installing the 12MB card also. Rather than rattle off a bunch of benchmarks, I'm going to let you see for yourself the difference between the 8MB and 12MB cards side by side in some games. So let's get started. Well, that was an interesting test to say the least. I can't honestly say that I personally can notice a big difference, but maybe your more trained eye can. To me though, using 12 megabyte cards just seems more complete in games. It's hard to describe, and maybe it's just a placebo effect, but something about the 12 megabytes just seem to make games that little bit better. Anyway, that's about it from me this week, and I'll see you next time.